The old man had once heard from his ancestors that the rice pavilion, which was owned by the main line of the family, was incomparably powerful. Helping people find their inner zeal was only part of its heavenly defying ability. If his descendants were going to improve their abilities, they had to enter the rice pavilion. Only then he would be able to give his family a chance to become part of the main line again. The old man had finally taken the first step towards realizing his family's dream. Ever since the Joseph family had begun to be successful in the world nearly 1,000 years before, there had been many experts among the family who had made their mark on the world. It was not uncommon for them to have outstanding talents. Since they were experts in many areas, they had many followers and people that worked for them, but many of them would establish great careers and impressive empires to then retire at a young age and return to their family to live out the rest of their lives. However, many of these followers had sacrificed a great deal to work for these experts, and they had stuck around because of promises from the leaders assuring them that they would receive compensation for their help. They assured them that they and their descendants would be rewarded for their work, and so these families were given tokens to show their association. These followers had also joined because they knew the power of the Joseph family. They made sure that their descendants knew the contributions they had made, especially because sometimes the Joseph family would require more help. They passed down their token as a family heirloom, because they knew if they could maintain this connection with the Joseph family, that their descendants would benefit tremendously. Some followers had chosen to continue working and would establish their own business and empires. However, there was no avoiding karma, and many of these families had to deal with the consequences. Their group slowly formed the peripheral forces of the Joseph family. But then, one other group of people stayed close to the Josephs. They followed their leaders back to their domestic lives to cultivate. They claimed to be servants, guards, and other things. Although there were not many of these people originally, they had grown for thousands of years. The number of these people was quite considerable. Moreover, these people were usually people who were very obsessed with martial arts. The Joseph family was not stingy with their resources and cultivation techniques of martial arts, except for the core martial arts of the Joseph family. The rest was open to those who were not part of the main family but had stuck around. This had created a large number of experts with different surnames in the Joseph family. They had taken root in the family and were around to protect and support the Joseph family. However, there were two sides to everything. In the end, the people of the Joseph family who had entered the world to cultivate could not all become strong warriors. There was a small number of weak people among them who would not be able to cultivate as the family required them to. In the end, they could only stay in the business world. Because of this, which did not bring rewards of its own kind to these contributors. As time passed, these families would spread their roots in the secular world and give birth to children. Slowly, more and more of these people formed the branch system of the Joseph family. For a long time, generations of these branch family members had been looking forward to the emergence of a true expert in their bloodline. Then, they would obtain the recognition of the family and return to the main branch. The child and the grandfather standing in front of these two men were members of one of these branch families, and long waited for the day when they could have a martial arts expert as part of their family.
Yes, a decent figure has finally appeared among the branch families. Not bad,
a voice suddenly said from the crowd. The two men were shocked, since they hadn't noticed anyone approaching them. When they turned around, they saw an ordinary woman standing behind them with a girl. It was Teresa, and the middle-aged woman who had been talking to her. When they saw this middle-aged woman, they were shocked. Then they immediately bowed their heads and respectfully said, "Greetings, Master Elise." The woman called Elise ignored the two of them. Instead, she carefully stared at Terry, who had become even more cautious. She nodded slightly and said to him,
"Little fellow, work hard if you want any opportunities in the future. You will likely have trouble even becoming an opponent of Teresa."
The others looked curiously at the teenager in front of them. While they couldn't see anything special about Teresa, they knew that Elise wouldn't say such a thing unless she was impressive in some way. The two men were shocked at her words. Alexander and Terry were the only ones able to cultivate their inner energy in the Rice Pavilion, and had extraordinary talent. So how could you say that Teresa would be more impressive? Most of the people present didn't know this ordinary-looking woman very well, but they knew who she was. She was called the Frigid Phoenix. She was the younger sister of the current Lord Ben, but she rarely appeared in front of anyone. Elise had made a name for herself when she was young, and she was proficient in music. She had beaten the disciples of the major families until they couldn't even look at her out of shame. She was called the female devil, and she had been one of the Joseph family's prodigies. After she entered the world to cultivate, she chose to start with music, which caused huge waves in the secular entertainment industry. Although she was of average appearance, the music she played was enough to enter one's heart and shake one's soul. It made any other singer feel self-conscious about making their own music. She had been very immersed in her own world until a man appeared. His singing had been like a holy light shining on every corner of the world. At the same time, it also opened Elise's heart. The two of them fell in love. Unfortunately, that sweet period did not last for long before he mysteriously disappeared. There was no sign of him or any farewell. Elise searched the entire world, but there was still no news of him. And then one day, she found the man's corpse. He had offended a prominent figure in the entertainment industry years before. The person he had offended had been waiting for the opportunity to strike. In the end, Elise's true love was unable to escape and was killed. Even worse, the murder weapon had been a zither that Elise had once given to him that he always kept with him. After that, Elise disappeared for 10 years. When she reappeared, she used her abilities to destroy the prominent man who had done this, killing him and all people he'd hired or ever worked with, eventually killing over 300 people, gaining her a reputation and many other names, such as the Bloody Soulist and the Frigid Phoenix. She had grown bitter towards others, especially those who were more elite in the business world. She lashed out and killed many people over time. The number of deaths had shocked the entire country. Ever since, she had been known as the Frigid Phoenix, and her reputation had spread far and wide. The Hayes family, or the powerful family that Elise had killed, was also one of the few major powers in the world at the time, equal in many ways to the Joseph family. They couldn't just look over these crimes, so they sent people to capture Elise. Both parties once again started fighting, but in the end, Elise slaughtered the 4 assassins and returned to her family to improve her skills. At that time, the patriarch of the Hayes family was furious. He went to the Joseph family and asked them to hand Elise over. If it wasn't for the Lord's protection at the time, Elise would have died at the hands of the Hayes family a long time ago. However, because of this, the Joseph family had also become enemies with the Hayes family. The Hayes family had attacked the Joseph family many times, leading to resentment between them. Both sides were constantly up against each other in various fields such as martial arts, politics, and business. There were victories and defeats on each side. During this time, Elise had also taken action several times. When she attacked, someone would inevitably end up dead. In fact, during an exploration mission when the government asked prominent families to send representatives to evaluate a new mining planet, all the Hayes family representatives that went had disappeared. Later on, the government explained that the mining planet had an extremely dangerous zone and that the Hayes family members had gotten lost there. However, those who were discerning knew why no representatives but those from the Hayes family had gone missing at the time. Elise had been off exploring alone, though no one knew where she had gone. It was very possible that she followed them to the mining planet. Now 100 years have passed since then. All along the way, there were many enemies who wanted to assassinate Elise. However, she was rarely seen in public and she was very skilled in martial arts. So they never succeeded. Not only that, but some were afraid of how the Joseph family would react if something were to happen to her. Due to all of this, she continued to persist. Even today, the name Bloody Soulist puts fear in people's hearts and has become taboo in daily conversation. Master Elise, while Terry has extraordinary talent, he can't be compared with Miss Teresa. Miss Teresa has a perfect constitution.
Are you questioning me?
Of course not, of course not, the other man said as he broke out into a cold sweat.
You really think this boy is capable of such a thing? To be great, children have to possess yin and yang, contain all facets of life and nature within them. However, he is only yin and is cold to the extreme. His constitution is cold, wet, calm, and hidden. His inner energy is even colder, which is why his face is always so pale. It's a surprise he's lived this long.
Hearing this, the old man's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Although he did not understand the depth of everything she was saying, he understood his grandson's constitution, characteristics, and personality very well. Unfortunately, he had realized that everything that she said was accurate. However, Elise's final words about it being a miracle that he had lived this long sent chills down his spine. This child bore the responsibility of fulfilling the dream for their family. He absolutely could not allow anything to happen to him. Just as he was about to plead for the adults to save his grandson, Elise suddenly changed the topic.
However, the great path is invisible. There are many ways we can make up our defiances. Although he was extremely cold, his bones are clear and strange, and true fire is contained within the body. The fire of the sovereign, the fire of the prime minister, are the full of yang energy. It could keep his fire of life intact and protected. Not only that, but he could also be blessed with all kinds of yin attribute cultivation techniques in the future. It could be twice the result with half the effort. In fact, I remember that the clan has an ice prophecy. If this child is able to cultivate his skills, then there is a chance that he will be able to rise to great heights.
After saying that, Elise led Teresa away and left without looking back. Teresa followed Elise and glanced at Henry, who was still in a daze after his encounter in the Rise Pavilion. Even though they'd been back for some time, he couldn't help but look worried. Since everyone present was concerned about their child's condition, they all wanted to compare and were secretly paying attention to the other children in the hall. Henry's dazed and absent-minded state was noticed immediately. At the same time, they naturally thought that he had failed once again. Some people looked at him with pity. There were also those who were frustrated with him, and there were even others who took pleasure in his misfortune. Trash is trash. You may have gone into the Rise Pavilion, but you're still the same as you always were.
What a pity. Since Philip is such a prominent figure, Henry will make it in the world whether or not he can improve his martial arts skills. But isn't it so tragic that Philip is so skilled with martial arts and his son can't even do the basics?
Oh, please. Greatness takes its turn with all. You might be the strongest in our generation, but my child will certainly be stronger than your son. All at the same. It's still not possible. I told Philip that letting Henry enter the Rise Pavilion was a waste of family's resources, and now the Lord wants him to enter the Scripture Pavilion. I really don't know what he's thinking. Everyone present had different thoughts, but because Philip and Maria were there, few of them dared to show it. After all, in terms of family status, there were not many who ranked higher than Philip. In terms of martial arts talent, Philip might not be the strongest, nor had he been a prodigy as a child, but his martial arts skills were very fierce. And his style was even more ferocious. Furthermore, Philip had a straightforward and fearless personality. As a major general, he had a large number of troops under his command and was highly regarded by the Lord and some of the higher-ups in the family. Henry! Henry! Philip and Maria paid no attention to what else was happening. Seeing their child in a daze, their hearts were filled with anxiety and uneasiness. They regretted letting Henry enter the Rise Pavilion because they would much rather let their child live a happy, ordinary life. They did not want to see him fail from seeing the truth, and then wasting the rest of his life.
Dad? Mom? Why are you guys here?
Henry asked as he finally came back to his senses.
Henry, how are you? What's wrong? It's alright. You don't have to do martial arts anymore. You're so smart that you can do anything you want,
Maria said with concern.
What? Oh, that reminds me. Dad, where are all the family books and ancient scriptures kept?
Henry continued as though he had not heard Maria's words. Books? Are you talking about the Scripture Pavilion? It will open back up in 3 months. Why? Did you discover any of your personal zeal while you were in the Rise Pavilion?
No, I'm asking about the martial arts secret manual. I'm asking about the ancient books about theories, secrets, the classics, human physiology and astrology.
Henry corrected him. Oh, those books are in our library. Why are you asking about those? Philip asked curiously. From his son's answer, he knew that Henry had not found his individual zeal. But it seemed that his son's current condition was not as bad as he and Maria had imagined after learning the truth.
Where's the library? Can I go there now?
Henry asked. He didn't know if there were certain procedures to access the Joseph's library, but he knew his parents visited the library often, searching for solutions to Henry's problems with developing his martial arts skills. Of course you can. The library is different from the scripture pavilion. Our family members can go in at any time. Although there are some books that contain secrets, anyone in our family should be able to access them if you just get approval. If you check in your hollow brain, you should be able to find where it is.
Then I'll go to the library now, but don't worry about me. I'll be fine.
After saying that, without waiting for Philip or Maria's response, Henry disappeared like a wisp of smoke.
Do you think something happened to Henry?
Maria asked, her face a little worried. I don't think so. But in reality, Philip was also concerned.
Do you think Henry knows about his condition now?
Maria asked. I think he does. We all know what's possible in the Rise Pavilion, but I think Henry has discovered something we don't know. Let's wait and see. Also, did you notice that he seems to have changed a little?
You have the same feeling? I thought it was just my imagination. Just now, when I was holding Henry, I kept feeling that he's become stronger, and he seems to have grown a little taller.
Only a mother would have noticed such small details. Yes, he has become stronger and taller. Philip clapped his hands. Henry was not like this 2 hours ago, so something must have happened in the Rise Pavilion.